Hey everybody, it's Razib with conversation. We're 45. So it's been going a while now. And we have some, I think it's like 11 months since I talked about maybe almost a year. We'll talk about doing the conversation. Like I started thinking about the end of spring. Uh, and yeah, yeah, here we are. It's been a while. It's been a exciting year. A lot has happened in my life. I don't know about you, Josiah, but I think, a lot's happened, like, new job, all these other things. Some of you have noticed,
Yeah.
I am in an office. So, I don't talk
Right.
about my job too much because that's kind of like a separate thing. But, I will be in the Bay Area. I'm in the Bay Area a lot for work and personal stuff. But I'll be there for a conference actually around the 19th, 18th in San Mateo. So if there's any listeners, viewers, that wanna, I don't know, just see me, I guess. It's kinda weird. I mean, I don't really do those things too often, but, I'll be around. Anyway, I think we're gonna first talk about Iran, as people used to
Ran so
say.
far away. Yeah.
Yeah, so looks like Donald J. Trump got involved, and, you know, I've been tracking some of the controversy online. It looks like a lot of, like, hardcore MAGA fluencers, like, are, for lack of a better word, they're chipping out. They're freaking out.
Oh,
I actually, okay, so I was telling a friend of mine, I'll just say, like, Claremont adjacent is the way I will describe him in that, because that's correct. I kind of appreciate when it actually is exposed that some people have principles,
mhm.
because I'm not like, when I say I'm not a political person, I say this all the time. It's because like real political people, I feel, they have a tribe, they have a team. And sometimes that means that they kind of have to like, do a Baghdad Bob type thing and just kind of like change their opinion within
Right.
minutes because they got a team and they're trying to win. And that's fine. If you're a political operative or, if you're staff of the administration, I get all that stuff. I'm not like that type of person. I have a regular job, a regular life, and so I just say what I really think, and I have like some principles here. And obviously, anyone who's listening to this podcast or watching it, you guys know that I'm much more explicit about my political orientation than I am on my other stuff. And I'm pretty like low key elsewhere, so people have been like not totally sure sometimes. But I've been like on the right, broadly understood, basically my whole adult life since I was like conscious of that sort of thing. Libertarianism, or now I'm like probably less libertarian, whatever. I'm not like the most like, unlike Josiah, I'm not like harshly conservative on social
Severely,
issues.
severely.
Yeah, severely conservative on social issues. But, I know what my side is. I don't like, but, if I have a disagreement, I'll just say it. Like, when we're talking about like the tariffs, like I was just like, it's just retarded. Okay. And that's because I'm not a political person. Like, I'm not an operative, right? So I should be able to say what I think. And I have actually enjoyed some of the MAGA people who are like, like actually like our guest Josiah Lippincott has been like very, very like, I mean, he's kind of an America First, America Fortress isolationist, so it kind of makes sense. But
Right.
he obviously believes it, and he's tweeting about it. And I would say that it's kind of like rubber hits the road about like whether you believe in your principles when it's hard, not when it's easy. So right now, it looks like we threw the bunker busting bombs at Iran. They probably degraded its nuclear capacity somewhat, uh, but America's gotten off pretty scot free. You know, so it's if you're opposed to this intervention at this like scale, you're kind of putting yourself out there, and I kind of respect that, to be honest. I mean, in terms of like how I feel a very like squishy about it because I do think it's bad if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. On the other hand,
Right.
they have been about 10 weeks away from a nuclear weapon since I was 22, and that was a
Yeah.
long time ago. So it's kind of hard to like gauge whether we really need to do this now at all. But on the other hand, I'm not necessarily like ipso facto like, well, the Westphalian integrity of the Iranian nation, because I'm like writing a thing for my other Substack about this. The thing with Iran is like, the Iranian Revolution, and we talked about this last week. It came up in the 1970s. It is like it's kind of a zombie ideology and a zombie regime. And they're still, like, talking about the great Satan and everything like that. It was supposed to be, like, leading Islamic revivalism, between communism and capitalism and all this stuff, and it's just like, its sell-by date is way, way, we're way beyond it, and so I don't, like, feel like I'm not, like, gonna shed a tear for this regime. It's an annoying regime. It's not like
Yes,
it's
right.
there are annoying authoritarian regimes, and there are non-annoying authoritarian regimes, okay? And, like, the Iranian regime, they did, like, the bombing in Buenos Aires, like, during the Clinton administration. I mean, they've done, like, shady things, they've up to no good, and the reality is, like, nobody cares. There's no reason for it. They're not going to lead a global Islamic jihad, like,
Right.
Al Qaeda basically, like, took the Sunnis are not going to be led by Iran, partly because of what happened in Hama in 1983. There's reasons, but the whole thing is just performative and kind of dumb. And so, whatever. I just don't want to hear about Iran. I don't want like Israel to be scared. Just like everyone, just chill out. Just everyone, just be cool. That's how I feel about it.
Right,
But
right.
what do you think?
Well, and I will add another thing too. I mean, they are definitely a bad actor, on the world stage, and, you if they were to get a nuclear weapon, I actually don't think they would use it, but the point of having a nuclear weapon is not that you actually use it, it's that it provides deterrence, and so you get more of a free hand to do, more of their stuff. I will say with Iran in particular, I mean, there are some countries out there, I won't mention any names, but there are some countries out there where, if they have a lousy government, or some sort of horrible, like, okay, that's, maybe that's bad, but I don't know that if they replaced it with another government, that they would be doing hugely better, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's just, I was, whereas Iran, I do think they have a lot of untapped potential, um, in their population, their culture. They obviously have a lot of oil, so they could be doing hugely better as a society, I think, if it wasn't for the mullahs.
yeah. I would say I gotta say we was Shahs.
Yes, we were shy. That's right. That's right. Now, uh, that said, I think so. I have a couple of different threads that I want to go down, but I'll go down this one first, which is it does. We're early yet. I was a little surprised when Trump announced the initial. I mean, I guess it's just been one attack. From my more neocon old school Republican type of friends. There was a lot of like spiking the football, claiming vindication, non-intervention has been refuted or whatever. And I mean, it seems a little early. That seems a little premature to me. My experience, if I think back for my adult life of all let's separate out the minor military involvements, but all the major military interventions that the US has been involved with in my adult life, all of them initially seemed to go pretty well. And then it was only over a course of time that the bloom came off the rose and they started looking worse and worse. So, you, Iraq, the military phase of that went swimmingly.
Both
And it
times. Both times.
both times, yes. Um, Afghanistan, same thing. Libya, initially, I mean, we got rid of Gaddafi, blah blah blah. Uh, but things, it's only later that you kind of bear the consequences, and so I don't know that we know yet what all the consequences will be. Now, prior to our recording this, there was an Iranian attack on a U.S. military base in Qatar, aka some people call it Qatar for whatever reason. Uh, it kind of it kind of seems like this was mostly a symbolic attack. The U.S. had kind of semi-evacuated the base. I don't think there were any casualties. So this is kind of what happened with Soleimani, right? We killed him, and then Iran launched some missiles at like some of our bases in Iraq. But it seems like it was mostly a face-saving measure. So maybe that would indicate, so I think the bright side way of looking at this is okay, maybe that indicates that Iran is not going to do something horrible. They're not going to launch a terrorist attack on U.S. soil, for example, uh, or I mean, part of the problem, and maybe one of the reasons why this is happening now, is a lot of Iran's ability to project violence abroad has been degraded because they've lost so many of their proxies. Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria. They still have some people in Yemen or whatever, but so their ability to strike back is kind of limited. And maybe, I guess, the best case scenario is maybe we have degraded their uh, nuclear capabilities, and they are sensible enough to realize that they can't do anything major to us, and so they're going to settle for symbolism. I do think, uh, and one of the I would say that in terms of MAGA, there's always been in my mind a difference between the views of what you might call the MAGA influencer class, right? Twitter accounts, other TV pundits, or whatever, and the like MAGA rank and file, right? And it's never and it's never really been clear to me that the MAGA influencer class really has a lot of influence, right? Because MAGA, like the rank and file, they kind of look to Trump. So a lot of the big, as you know, there's been kind of a split within the like MAGA thought leaders. A lot of the big names have been very strongly against U.S. involvement. I'm thinking of Steve Bannon. I'm thinking of Tucker Carlson. Um, you mentioned Lippincott, some other Twitter people or whatever, and obviously they lost the argument. I suspect that if you were to just poll, I mean, I haven't seen any polling on this, but it doesn't seem like the American public or MAGA people are very exercised about it in general. And one reason for that, as I was thinking about it, is I do think that for most Americans, as long as you just stick with bombing people, Americans don't view that as a real war or a real conflict. To have a real conflict, you have to have some sort of military force on the ground. Either it doesn't necessarily have to be U.S. troops; it could be some foreign force that we are supporting from the air. But as long as we're just bombing people, I mean, as to quote Richard Nixon in the Oliver Stone film, the president can bomb whoever he likes, right? So I kind of that seems like that seems like a lower level of involvement, and certainly as I look at the examples people point to of failed U.S. military interventions over the last 20, 30 years, uh, m- it seems like most perhaps the problem is not the military phase of things. The problem is regime change, right? We not when you not if I mean we did do Trump did do some military strikes against Syria in during his first term. He killed Soleimani. Other people have done other military actions various places, and as long as uh the government remains in place, fundamentally the situation hasn't changed. I think a lot of the failure has come from, we have this idea that okay, the regime is bad, so we need to get rid of it and replace it with a liberal democracy, right? And what we find again and again is the regime is bad, but when you remove it, you don't get a liberal democracy. You get some sort of like anarchic, terroristic chaos, right? Um, so that I mean, there are people. I think even Trump tweeted something about regime change in Iran. So I would be very worried about that. Certainly, what it would take to actually do that for us. Uh, But short of that, if it's just a matter of, look, we don't like the Iranian regime, but if that's a internal matter. Iran having nuclear weapons is not an internal matter, so we're going to take care of that, and let the chips fall where they may for anything else. Perhaps that will work out okay. I don't know, right? I don't know. It's early. Uh,
Yeah, I think that's the key. It's early. I think, to get it to reiterate what you just said, what you had said, early on in your, narrative there, is we're at an early, really chill stage where everything is pretty clean.
yeah,
We are of an age where we've seen it happen in Iraq, we've seen it happen in Afghanistan. Arguably, we did see some of it happen in Kosovo, but we like looked away. I mean, if you dig what happened in Kosovo to Serbs and the fact that basically Kosovo became a mafia state for a while. I don't know if it still is, but
right.
I'm not saying that it was better or worse that it was under Serbian control, but you know, uh,
And
there's methods that are left over,
yeah,
that we don't pay attention to.
yeah, and Serbia. I don't think that the situation in Serbia itself. I mean, I don't know that Serbia itself did not descend into chaos. It was already kind of, there was already a big civil war going on, but it did have, I would say, pretty significant knock-on effects later on as part of alienating Russia from the West and other things like that, and providing pretexts and other things for interference in Georgia or Ukraine or other things like that. So, you
Yeah,
know,
there was a period in the late '90s where late '90s and early 2000s when it was before 9/11,
right?
and after the Kosovo period when Serbs were cast as villains, as the evil
Yes,
villains.
right. Yes, I think in 24, the show in 24, there was a kind of an unwritten rule that uh, Islamic extremists could be the bad guy every other season, but they had to pick out other Islamic bad guys for like the odd number seasons or whatever. And yeah, there was definitely some Serbs in there, and I think some like neo Nazis, of course, or whatever. But yeah, so for a little while, uh, although that does seem like it's pretty culturally bound these days. I don't think anybody even remembers the Serbs. So
Nope.
it's, yeah.
No,
Um,
Americans don't know what's going on abroad as long as people aren't Americans are not dying. That's fundamentally the reality.
right.
It's just not a priority.
Yeah. So as long as that continues, I think things will be okay for us. Um, there's also, I would say, a question. This is kind of an ongoing question of public opinion in Israel. Actually, I mean, the weird thing is, it's. I think I don't know this for certain, but I think that Israel's attacks are probably a net positive for them in terms of public relations, in the sense that since October the 7th, public opinion has shifted pretty strongly against Israel, from where it was before. I don't want to overstate things, but they have lost a lot of support, particularly in the West, in the United States, in Europe, because of what's going on in Gaza and other things like that. And weirdly, I mean, maybe I don't know that it's weird, but a lot of people who really don't like what Israel is doing in Gaza actually kind of don't mind if Israel gets rid of Iran's nuclear program, because they don't like it. So, I saw, for example, a statement from the EU that was basically Israel has the right to defend itself, and Iran needs to give up its nuclear program. Right, that was their response. Um, from many people who I'm sure have like condemned what Israel's been doing in Gaza over and over and over again. So, from a public relations standpoint, I don't think this is really the big issue for Israel. It does seem, I mean, it will be interesting what happens long term. I know that if you look at public opinion in the United States, it's very age stratified, where if you are over 65, say, kind of regardless of whether you're a Republican, Democrat, left, right, you're pretty pro Israel, you know, very overwhelmingly pro Israel, I would say. And as you get younger and younger, if you're talking about millennials or Zoomers, their the opinion on Israel is much more negative. Again, across the political spectrum, there is some difference. You know, there is some partisan difference depending on what poll you look at and how you phrase the question or whatever. But the big issue just really seems to be age, specifically talking about in the United States. Some of that I assume is demographic change, other things, but there's also there's a lot of things you could point to for why that is. So if that trend, if current trends to continue, then the United States being a pro-Israel bulwark is not going to be as certain. Right now, I don't want to overstate things. I think even among young people, I think there's still a pro-Israel majority or plurality at least, but the anti-Israel contingent just gets a lot bigger. Especially as you get much younger. Ironically, as the United States and Europe seem to be getting uh, less pro-Israel, more anti-Israel, however you want to say that. As that's happening, you also see significant favorable shifts in towards Israel in the Muslim world, in the Arab world. Among their uh, traditional antagonists there, um, to the point where I was joking to a friend of mine the other day that if things keep going the way they are in 10, 20 years, you could imagine Saudi Arabia in the UN arguing against uh, sanctions for Israel against Israel, being led by Europe or the United States or something. I don't think that's actually going to happen, but that is kind of the trend. Is like the a lot of really anti-Israel places have been kind of moderating, and whereas Western countries have becoming more skeptical. And I don't know. The thing about current trends continuing is often they don't. So we can't really see. You can't necessarily project what it's going to be out 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah, so one thing is, I wanna mention here, you're talking about the like, kinda like, the anti-Israel tendencies among some of the Arab states, like, because the Abraham Accords and stuff is really attenuated. I think one of the things to, obviously remember, and it's kind of being unsaid because it's like, I don't well, partly because Americans aren't good at geography and, like, all these complicated details, but, there's I mean, there's been, like, pretty much silence from the Arab states, partly because they're not super excited about a highly militarized, powerful Iran themselves. And so they kind of, they can't say it, but they kind of are okay with Israel taking Iran's nuclear program out. They're not just okay with it. They're really okay with it. Like that's,
Low key
maybe
supportive, yeah.
yeah, they might say something in public about, like, how you should, like, take these sorts of, like, unilateral actions, blah, 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 but the reality is, Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia is an example that I will give, is, like, their economy, their per capita GDP is far higher than Iran now. Iran's economy has really not done well since 2005, partly because of sanctions and everything like that. Again, it's like Iran, I think, Sweden is, used to say that they were a, humanitarian superpower. Iran's like an ideological superpower, but that means it's, like, really given, ground on its economic performance, and, like, that's why there were, like, massive protests, like, 4 years ago, and, the regime's a little bit of a basket case economically. Saudi Arabia has really surpassed it in a lot of ways, and, a couple of years ago, Saudi Arabia was like, "Oh, they're all, like," you know the women are running around in garbage bags, that sort of things. And now it's all very, very liberal compared to the way it was because of MBS. So, Iran doesn't have the economic, the cultural advantages that it used to, just because of the regime, just because of the ayatollahs, the mullahs, who are, this is partly like cultural overhang. Khomeini is like 86, and the revolutionary generation, the youngest members of the revolutionary generation are about 60. Like people that were like late older teens in the late 1970s. They are, they're approaching 60 now, and so we are in a situation where Iran is somewhat of a gerontocracy. Uh, Obviously, you have 86-year-old on top. It's somewhat of a gerontocracy, but even some of these people that are being taken up by Israel, like you look at them, they're in their 60s, 70s. Uh, the people that really care about the revolution are old. It doesn't seem like young people are invested, and they're not enforcing the headscarf laws and stuff like that. So it looks like it is, ripe for some change. Maybe the Trump administration will push it over. The issue here is it just seems really great until it doesn't. I don't think Iran is like Iraq, and again, I'm gonna have a Substack piece about it. Like Iran is a real nation state. It has a real ruling elite. It has a real state. It has real state capacity. It's not going to just like collapse into a bunch of different tribes. It's not a tribal society actually, like Arab Iraq is. But you know, uh, we have been through this overthrowing Iranian autocracy and authoritarianism before. So the communists were really big fans of the Iranian Revolution because they're stupid. There were a lot of people that were like supporting the revolution until they were executed, basically in the early 1980s. So even the Shia revivalism, there was Red Shiism, which is more left wing. But really, what happened is the bazaar, like the conservative capitalists of the non-westernized capital class really took over under Ayatollah Khomeini in the 1980s, and they've kind of like run Iran. And part of the reason that the regime works is the Revolutionary Guard and these capitalists. They kind of have captured the state, and they make it work for them, even if most of the people are immiserated. Right? This is, I think, it's the predatory state hypothesis. Right? They're just squatting and they're collecting their rents out of the state. And so that's one of the reasons why they're still invested. Not because they're like ideologically invested, it's just because it's good for them. This is what's happening in Burma. It's also what's happening in Pakistan. Iran's not as extreme as those two cases, but I think that is a lot of the situation that we're seeing. And we're going to see if Israel and the United States can like destabilize the system enough, because I think there's massive preference called falsification. It's quite clear, actually. Like I think I said this last week, but I read an article in the New York Times about it. It's like you can have anything. You can. The reason the Mossad infiltrates Iran so easily is like everyone has a price, right? Like I mean, they're talking about how like you go to a fancy hotel and they like offer you prostitutes, even though that's like the death penalty.
Right.
But it's like they just pay the cops. It's okay. So
I think you
this,
described last time as Brezhnev era,
yeah,
your technology.
nobody believes in it anymore. Nobody believes in the regime. So that means that once there's like a crack, it will crash very fast. And then what happens after that? I mean, I think an ideal situation for us would be a military peacekeeping operation, and then maybe like have regular political parties run. I don't know. I mean, honestly, we don't care as long as the oil flows.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Just keeping it real there.
That's
And the
right.
refugees do not.
I will say I don't think I mentioned this last time, but I do think from a realpolitik perspective, I'm not sure if it would be good for Israel to totally defeat Iran. I think it's useful for Israel. Having Iran as like a boogeyman has been very useful for Israel in the region in winning allies from Arab and non-Arab states alike. And so I do wonder if you were to totally get rid of Iran as a threat, would that kind of fall apart a little bit? And people would kind of revert to hating Israel, or have they established enough connection that it no longer, that's kind of self-sustaining? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes both ways, right? I feel like Israel is a way for Iran to kind of channel some ideological energies in some of these Arab countries like Qatar, and Qatar, as you would say. But so it goes both ways. But to go back to an old Josiahism, you take a win. You don't win by losing in the short term. So I think Israel, this is what Israel's wanted for a long time. So it's getting it, right? It's getting it. I mean, I don't know if the other guest has an opinion on that, but seems a little distracted. But
Yeah, what was the, uh, for those who were, watching the video as opposed to the audio, uh, we had there was that famous incident of the guy talking about Korea, and then his kids came in the background or whatever.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So we had a version of that, I guess.
Like she's like dancing,
Yes,
and
that
then
yeah, exactly, yeah.
and then the other baby comes in the
The baby
stroller
comes with a
or the
stroller,
walker.
wife
Yeah,
comes in, that's it, yeah. So it's not
he
that low.
looked really and like it was like, bro, it's just like not that big of a deal, but he was so stressed out, you know?
You know,
He was
yeah,
apologies.
that's right, yeah. Oh, boy, that's good. Well, you mentioned that all of these, Iranian leaders, have been around forever and they're in their 60s or whatnot, and they're old. But you know who else is in his 60s and strangely is not old despite that is, Tom Cruise, right? So
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, yeah.
know, I just saw, the final, I guess, Mission Impossible movie is out in theaters. I've seen all the Mission Impossible movies. Uh, and I rewatched a
All right. So
and
I've
I'm
only seen 2,
yeah,
but let me just like say, like, I didn't know how many there were. So I saw the 1996 one.
yeah,
There's one in 2000, Mission Impossible 2. There's Mission Impossible 3 in 2006. There's Mission Impossible, I mean, I guess 4 in
yeah, and those
2011. There's Mission Impossible 5 in 2015. I saw Mission Impossible 6 in 2018. And then
yeah,
there's another one in 2023, Mission Impossible 7, and this is the final Mission Impossible 8, I guess, in 2025. That's crazy. That's a lot of them.
it is a lot. Yeah, it's been 30 years basically, and, they don't I mean, it's an interesting series, I would say, especially I mean, the first couple, Mission Impossible movies are kind of standalone, right? Films, I mean, they're, decent action films, and they've got I think everybody remembers probably, the scene of Tom Cruise in the control room, where he's, like, going like this or whatnot, right? Um, but, the latter movies, I mean, they're all you could watch any one of them, I would say, as kind of like a self-contained thing, except for the last one, perhaps, but they did do a thing where over time, they would develop new characters would join the team, and then characters would die, and they would, develop relationships and so on and so forth. Tom Cruise is, of course, like the constant point point throughout the entire thing, but people would be there, and then they would disappear, and they would show back up, and they would have their own kind of roles, So, and especially, um, I will say, Razib, that if you were going to watch, uh, if you were going to watch some more of these Mission Impossibles, you might want to watch, Rogue Nation and or Fallout, which have Rebecca Ferguson, who I think, you might appreciate her.
Yeah, I'm a feminist. I'm a
Yes,
feminist, and I really support
yes,
I support the careers of actresses,
that's right,
who are trying to girl boss their way into thespian fame, and so I think that's why Josiah is saying that. I'm a feminist.
right, that's right. And then, the other thing which kind of was present a little bit in the first film, but kind of got more and more elaborate as it went on is I think what the Mission Impossible movies were known for was the kind of elaborate stunts, sequences. You got to break into something, and you have some chase sequence, and you're riding a motorcycle onto the back of an airplane, and then you climb up the wheel of the airplane. all that stuff. Uh, the films I would, especially the later films, are kind of centered around those sorts of sequences, which are very elaborate and fun. And it's also kind of known, Tom Cruise has like a big thing about how he does his own stunts or whatever. And he does, I mean, I don't, it is kind of amazing if you're like, if you're watching this latest movie, he definitely looks older than he did in the first one, right? I mean, like if you see shots of him side by side from Mission Impossible 1 versus the current one, okay, you can tell he's aged. But it's very hard, and for whatever reason, whether it's vanity or to increase ticket sales or whatnot, there are a lot of scenes in this latest movie where he's either shirtless or he's in his underwear. He has to go like on underwater missions or whatnot. His clothes get caught and ripped off, and it's very difficult to believe that this is like a 62-year-old man or whatever. I mean, I don't know. Um, I mean, I assume he's had some plastic surgery done, but what other sorts of regimen he has undergone in order to do this? I mean, he looks, a lot of actresses in general look kind of 10 years younger than they really are these days, I would say. But he definitely looks 20 years younger than he really is, like if you saw him in the movie and someone said, "Oh yeah, he's like 42 or whatever," you would say, "Okay, yeah, that seems reasonable." But if you say like he's 62, it's like, "What? That doesn't make any sense?"
I
Um,
mean, look, he has access to alien technology.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yes,
So,
that's right.
that's fundamentally the reality of it.
The Satan free living, it's very it helps you, right? I guess. Um, but yeah, I mean, so the movies are fun. Cruise definitely it's very clear that he cares about like the craft of movie making in a way that a lot of people don't these days. He's about all about giving the fans a good time. I like, obviously they're not high art in terms of the drama or the dialogue or the plots. The plots often very just don't make a sense if you think about it. It's there's some sort of MacGuffin and some sort of evil transnational type of thing. The other thing that I think is striking about these movies, um, which was not, I don't- this was it was not very striking at the beginning, but has kind of continued on despite a lot of changes in our political culture, is that it is fundamentally, these are pro American movies, right? They're not very political, I would say, despite involving spycraft and whatnot. But in general, the kind of worldview of the films is um, that it's good that America, it's good that American clandestine people are out there trying to keep us safe. And while, like some higher up in the US government might be a spy or, working for himself, but the actual highest levels are all just patriots, right? Like it's never the case that, um, you know, the president or even like the head of the CIA necessarily would be an out and out bad guy. He might have conflicts with Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise has to go rogue or whatever, but that's always just kind of temporary and ultimately, they thank him for saving the world again or whatnot. And that's in contrast to, I think, the kind of perspective you get in a lot of other cinema. Things like the Bourne movies might be an example, right? Where just like like the US foreign policy, US government, intelligence services or whatever are seen as being like these malevolent forces in the world, totally corrupt. And, that's an attitude that used to be associated with like the far left. Now I would say it has also significant purchase on the right for various reasons, but the movies don't ever really show any indication of that. They're kind of like old school, Romney, Reagan. To the extent they have any political content at all, it's like a hazy Romney Reagan type of thing, I would say. And that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they're popular, like, they didn't get infected, I think, by,
Yeah.
the cultural politics of the awakening and they were I mean, I haven't watched them all, but, like, I did watch the 2017 or 2018 one, I think, and I did watch the '96 one, and, frankly, like, the 2018 one was fun, he was a little older, he ran longer in the straight line, but in terms of it just, like, vibe and feel, like, it felt to me like, okay, like, it there wasn't a major update, you know, in
Yes.
terms of, like, the cultural sensibility, like, it felt very, like, out of time, could be 1990s, could be 2000s, could be 2000, but it's just, like, it's not like, you know, he's not being introduced with what I'm
Yeah.
okay, so I don't know, like, I haven't watched it, but, like, for example, it's a big deal, there's, like, a lot of movies all of a sudden, like, I don't really understand why there's a black lesbian. I'm
Right.
I'm not, like, hating on that, I'm just saying, like, it's just, like, sometimes it's like, okay, that is that the most appropriate casting choice? But you understand that there's cultural politics going on there, right? I don't get a sense Mission Impossible movies were doing that.
Yeah, not really. I mean, there were a fair number of like female military characters or like minor people or whatnot. They are, I mean, the movies, especially the later ones, they do lean into like the kind of 115-pound chick like throwing 250-pound guys over her shoulder type
Yeah.
of thing. Uh
You know what I blame for that? You know what I blame for that? I think really you have to go back to Mila Jovovich
yes,
in Resident Evil. I think she really started that trend of, like, these, like, badass, like, you know, models. So
right,
they're, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like they're even like Ronda Rousey who, whatever you say about her, like, okay, that's kinda plausible that she would
right,
fight, but,
right,
like, literally, like, a woman that, like, me and you could probably just, like, lift up with one arm or something crazy, you know?
right. Yeah,
Is like bodying these, like, 255 or 250-pound jacked good dudes and stuff,
yeah,
so,
yeah. I mean,
but I think that's one of those things we kind of all understand, that it's
well, I don't know if we all understand or not, but I understand that it's fiction, and I actually think probably I do think that that sort of thing probably has had an effect just on the general populace and giving them a false impression of differences. I do like most people do accept and realize that men tend to be stronger than women, right? But I don't think that people have a sense of the actual scale of it, men or women, most of them. Actually, remember I saw a clip the other day from the Whatever podcast, right? And there was some girl on there who was saying that she takes, I think she was doing Brazilian jiu jitsu or something, and she's basically like, I like it because it means that if I'm in a real world situation, a man's attacking me or whatever, I'm going to be able to defend myself. And one of the male guests is like, "Well, you need to be realistic about this." And so, just as a demonstration, he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna be like," he's sitting in a chair, and he's like, "You come up behind me, you get me in whatever hold you want, right?" And then we'll see what happens. So she goes and she gets him in like a chokehold, and he just like stands up and like flips her over him, and it right. So she obviously had a misapprehension.
kinda
Uh,
dangerous, actually. It's kinda dangerous if
it
you
is,
thought that,
yeah, it can be kind of dangerous, yeah. Um,
because like, there's some women that probably should just, like, run.
they should
That
run,
might
or you get like a gun or mace or pepper spray is probably in a lot of situations better than trying to use your mixed martial arts skills, right? Um, so I don't know that people. I think probably I don't think that was. I don't think that this is a conscious psyop, but I do think it probably has psyoped a lot of people into underestimating just the
Yeah, I so
degree of
back during, like, the end of the BLM period and stuff like that, there were these, like, fights between Proud Boys and Antifa and stuff like that, and one of the things you would notice if you watch the videos is, the Antifa had a lot of women,
right,
and, like, they were, like, getting their asses beat, actually, and it was pretty, like, disturbing because, like, a lot of them were not very big, they're probably vegan or something crazy, you know? And, like, I think a lot of people were just like, "What are they thinking?" But, like, they're communists, so, like, they're already delusional. So
right,
maybe on some level, they thought that they could take these guys. But the reality is, even if the guy is your size, it looks approximately your size, the muscle mass is considerably large. It's just there's no contest. And so you're seeing these, like, women being beat up during these, and that was, like, a real life consequence of I don't think, they started believing their own propaganda.
right, right.
Like, they had skin in the game, and they got their asses beat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a reason why there's traditionally been a kind of norm uh, about. I mean, I don't know how traditional it is, but there is a norm for a reason about you know male violence against women, right? Uh,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I mean, there's a reason why it's like a one way thing. It's not like women never attack men, or that's good, but you could just do so much more damage. I would say is like a typical man against a typical woman than vice versa, or vice
yeah,
versa, I should say.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, that's yeah, those norms exist for a reason. They're not just, like, arbitrary sexism or something like that. So, I mean, back to Mission Impossible, like, is this the end? I don't really know much about the movie. I
Yeah,
mean, is this the end?
yeah. So I mean, without giving too many spoilers, they said in advance that this was going to be the last movie, and I do think, I mean, Cruise is kind of, even though he doesn't look like he's in his 60s, I'm sure he's thinking, the movies have been very successful, but there's a certain point where you're not able to going to be able to do it anymore, and so might as well go out. Now, based on the movie itself, I don't like. There's no reason why they couldn't make another one. Without giving away too many spoilers, I would say. Um, but they've said that this is going to be the last one, and it uh it kind of felt like an end movie. They had all sorts of callbacks and flashbacks to prior movies. There was, I would say, the like most obscure cameo reveal of all time in a movie, which all right, I'm gonna reveal it. So anyone who hasn't seen the movie and cares about this, but as you know, like probably the most famous scene from the first Mission Impossible movie, as we've already alluded to, is when they're like breaking into Langley and Cruise is doing the like thing or whatnot. So anyway, in this new movie, uh, they have to go get like a code from somewhere, and so they go to this remote um island off the coast of Alaska, and there's a guy there, who has been operating this thing for 30 years or whatnot, and he's in the movie for a while, and then like half an hour into the movie or 45 minutes, even an hour into his being in the movie, he meets the Tom Cruise character, and Tom Cruise is like, don't I know you? And then they flash back to that scene from the first movie, and this guy is the guy who was like going in and out of the control room, like the analyst who goes in and like Tom Cruise is like above him or whatever. He's in the movie, they bring him back and they make a big deal that like, hey, it's that guy. So uh just like a random, semi like almost a not quite extra from the first film, and they give him like a sizable role in the new movie. So there's a bunch of fun stuff like that, I would say. If that's
Alright, so it kinda like they kinda like they tied the threads together. I mean, it seems like, I do have to say, like, Cruz, in this, like I mean, he probably will be alive for decades, but really, kinda like, what is it? Like, the guy that okay, the strawberry blonde guy, not now I forgot his name, I feel, like, old now that I forgot his name. Uh,
From what?
I know the movie, so, it is, Robert Redford, okay? He's still alive. Actually,
Yeah.
he is 89, but he's not doing any more movies because his hearing is, like, gone because there was, like, some incident on a movie, I
Mhm.
think. But anyway, I'm only bringing him up as, like, Cruise, like, still has, like, over 20 years till he gets to Redford age, but so he can't produce but he's gonna be making different types of movies when he's
Sure, he'll be
70.
yeah, yeah, he's not retired from acting or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
no.
So this is, like, kind of the culmination of his career, but also with Top Gun a couple of years ago.
Right,
I
yes.
do feel that in a way, his career it's kind of experienced in Indian summer, because when we were young, Tom Cruise was a big deal.
Yes.
Um, and I'm not saying he didn't become a big deal, but like there was a period with the Marvel, the comic book movies, and the
Right.
whole idea of a movie star kind of wanted to decline. And Cruise was a little bit of a dinosaur there. Like continuing with the Mission Impossible films, they were successful, but
Yeah,
I think people started wondering like, do we even need someone like Tom Cruise? And the reality is,
right.
Top Gun sequel was great in
Yeah,
terms of like it was like, extremely successful, and Mission Impossible movies are extremely successful. And, the superhero films are kinda, like, running out of steam. I think people are, like, sick of them. They're sick of their formula.
right.
And so it's interesting, Cruise has outlasted the moment that almost seemed to have eclipsed him. And, now he's gonna go to a different stage of his career, but my point here is,
He could do a
when
Marvel.
when we were in the '90s, when we were in the ni like, I will say when we were in the '90s, like, he was, like, a massive movie star, right?
Right.
Kind of go he did, like, some stuff in the '80s where it was, like, he's up and coming, like, this handsome actor. He was kind of in his, like, young Brad Pitt phase in the '80s where it's like, oh, it's just, like, he's just really good looking, you know? And then he, like, started doing the Mission Impossible and became, like, a marquee kind of action movie star that was, like, a new thing for him. I remember when Tropic Thunder came out, people were saying, like, he had kind of a cameo in Tropic Thunder,
Yeah.
and I think he did some, like, rock film, Rock of Ages or something that was not successful. He was trying to do different things around, like, 2010.
He was in
And
Magnolia,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, there were things where it was like, "Oh, like, is his moment past?" And the reality is, no, it's not. He came back with the Mission Impossible films in terms of they, like I think Top Gun definitely that sequels are hard to pull off.
yes. Yeah, especially after, after 30, 40 years, however long it was between those movies or whatever. Uh, but yeah, he's got
Yeah, yeah.
staying power, and I'm sure he'll do other stuff, as well. And it is true, like, there aren't really equivalents, like, it's hard to find, equivalents to someone like Cruz from the current generation, you know? I guess, I mean, maybe Henry Cavill, but he's not, I mean, it's just not on the same scale, and
Oh,
even Cavill is, like, 40 now or something, I think.
yeah, 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 he's been around for a while now, I mean,
Yeah.
the Superman films are, like, almost 15 years old now,
Right.
you know? Cavill was born in '83. He's well above 40.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So, yeah, they just don't kinda make movie stars like they used to, I guess, but
yeah. Hope you enjoyed the podcast so far. To listen to the rest of it, please go to conversation.substack.com.
2 minds met on a summer's eve, each with truths they long believed. Words flowed like a winding stream as hours passed in deep debate. And after all was said and done, they found a thread of common ground. In listening close, they came to see a shared humanity. They spoke of justice, spoke of change, of history's weight and future's range. Their views at first seemed worlds apart, but patience bridged the divide. And after all was said and done, they found a thread of common ground. And listening close, they came to see a shared humanity. They spoke of justice, spoke of change, of history's weight and future's range. Their views at first seemed worlds apart, but patience bridged the divide. It's not about who's wrong or right, but understanding others' light. In civil discourse we can find the ties that gently bind. And after all was said and done, they found a thread of common ground. And listening close, they came to see a shared humanity. As dawn broke soft on dewy grass, they smiled and shook hands at last. Two souls enriched by reason talk, united in respect. And after all was said and done, they found a thread of common ground. And listening close, they came to see a shared humanity. This folk song captures the essence of a long, thoughtful discussion between two public intellectuals. It emphasizes the power of patient listening, mutual respect, and the discovery of common ground. The gentle tone reflects the calm and understanding they reach after their debate. Would you like me to expand on any aspects of the lyrics or discuss the theme?